Shedeur Sanders didn't rise up the depth chart because someone handed him the playbook. He did it by refusing to be ignored. That's what Bobby Musgrave drove home in a press conference that went far beyond praise. Sanders' development, according to Musgrave, was driven by early mornings, late nights, and film room discipline, not coaching favoritism or fast-tracked reps. The acknowledgement was pointed. Sanders had earned every snap through effort, not endorsement. And in highlighting that, Musgrave exposed just how little support the rookie was given by Kevin Stefanski during critical early months. The gap between where Sanders started and where he's headed now speaks volumes. Every improvement in footwork, every clean throw from the pocket.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
It's all rooted in personal commitment, not system design. While Tommy Ree helped unlock pieces of his game with better play calling, the larger truth remains. This is a quarterback who developed in spite of, not because of, the system around him. Musgrave's comments make clear that if Sanders succeeds long-term, the credit won't go to the organization. It'll go to the one coach who stood up and said he was failed. The moment Bobby Musgrave stepped up to the mic, everything shifted. This wasn't your standard midweek press conference. This was a calculated, deliberate call-out, aimed squarely at the heart of the Cleveland Browns' internal dysfunction. It was direct enough to make headlines but subtle enough to avoid fines. No names were shouted. No shots were fired in obvious fashion. But make no mistake, Musgrave's message was sharp, loaded, and squarely pointed at head coach Kevin Stefanski. And the subject of it all? Rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders. For most of the season, Shedeur sat in a spot that no promising young QB with his level of upside should ever sit, fourth string. Not third. Not developmental backup. Fourth. That means no game reps. No practice time with the ones. No serious investment from the coaching staff. And for what? Because of some preseason flaws? Because of early habits that literally every rookie quarterback goes through? That's where Musgrave drew the line. During his press conference, Musgrave made it crystal clear that Shedeur's early struggles were not a reflection of poor preparation or lack of ability. They were the exact same issues that even the greatest quarterbacks in history dealt with early on. He specifically referenced John Elway. Yes, that John Elway, as proof that rookie quarterbacks often deal with drifting in the pocket, adjusting to faster defenses, and developing rhythm in real time. The difference? Elway was given that time. Shedeur wasn't. Instead, he was evaluated based on preseason tape and locked away behind the depth chart like he wasn't worth the risk. Meanwhile, Musgrave and offensive coordinator Tommy Ree were watching something else entirely. A player who was improving behind the scenes. A player who was showing up every day, learning, executing, growing. And that's where Musgrave's tone changed. He praised Shedeur's footwork, his rhythm, his feel for the game. But more importantly, he didn't credit any grand development plan from the head coach. He didn't point to Stefanski's leadership or his system. He pointed to Shedeur's work ethic, his determination, his willingness to evolve even when the team wasn't giving him the platform to do it. Then came the praise for Tommy Ree, who, according to Musgrave, actually did help facilitate Shedeur's growth through scheme design and real coaching support. That contrast wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Musgrave went out of his way to single out Ree's contributions while making no mention, none at all, of Stefanski. In NFL coaching culture, that omission is everything. Because when a quarterback coach ignores the head coach's role in a rookie's development during a public statement, it's not a slip. It's a message. That message? Shedeur didn't just have to fight through defenses. He had to fight through the very structure of the organization. And it's working. Every time Shedeur steps on the field now, it's clear he's not just surviving, he's flourishing. His throws are sharp. His reads are cleaner. His mobility is instinctive. You can see the progression with your own eyes. But that progress didn't come from Stefanski's system. It came from the reps he finally started getting and the real coaching happening away from the spotlight. Which makes one thing painfully obvious. He could have been further along by now. Musgrave stopped short of saying it directly, but his comments made the reality undeniable. Shedeur's development was delayed. Not because he wasn't talented. Not because he wasn't ready. But because organizational decisions, Stefanski's decisions, kept him buried on the depth chart for far too long. And what was the justification for that? Preseason tape? Early pocket drifting? If that's enough to sideline a potential franchise quarterback, then the Browns don't have a talent problem. They have a philosophy problem. Musgrave's line, We'll get to the crux of the matters in the off-season. Wasn't a throwaway. That was a red flag being raised in real time. A warning that internal discussions are already happening. That this situation will be reviewed. And that accountability is coming. For the decisions made and the development paths blocked. Let's be clear, this is about more than Shedeur. It's about the culture in the building. It's about which voices are prioritized, who gets to shape the depth chart, and what kind of development environment the Browns actually want to build. Because if this is how they handle quarterbacks with elite traits and proven work ethic, then what's happening to the players we don't hear about? Musgrave didn't just stick up for Shedeur. He exposed a deeper disconnect between those trying to develop talent and those in charge of managing it. This isn't just a coaching disagreement. This is a spotlight on Cleveland's leadership structure. Stefanski's silence in all of this, his absence from the conversation, his lack of visible support for his rookie quarterback, has become deafening. Musgrave and Ree are out here doing the work. Coaching, building, adjusting. Meanwhile, Stefanski is standing behind preseason decisions like their gospel, ignoring the most fundamental rule in football. Players develop through reps. You don't get better sitting. You don't grow in a red jersey on scout team. You grow by playing. By learning on the fly. By being trusted to make mistakes and come back better. Musgrave clearly understands that. Which begs the question, why doesn't Stefanski? And now, as Shedeur shows he was ready all along, the narrative that he wasn't has collapsed. The idea that he needed to be hidden, held back, seasoned before seeing the field, it didn't hold up under pressure. Musgrave didn't dismantle that argument. Shedeur's play did. Musgrave just had the courage to say what everyone else has been thinking. He should have been out there sooner. That's where the frustration comes from. Because this wasn't a case of a rookie needing time. It was a case of a coaching staff not knowing how to handle a rookie with potential. A staff that put process over progress. Caution over conviction. And now they're exposed. So what happens next? That depends on whether the organization is willing to learn from this, really learn. That means more than giving Shedeur starts next season. It means reevaluating who's making decisions, how quarterback development is prioritized, and what kind of system is in place to actually support young players, not just label them too raw to play. Because Shedeur Sanders has already proven he belongs. He's already shown the growth, the poise, the talent. Now the Browns need to prove they can create a culture where that kind of player doesn't have to fight through their own coaching staff just to see the field. This offseason is going to be critical. Not just for Shedeur, but for the entire future of the Browns quarterback room. Because if they don't fix this now, they'll do what Cleveland has done for years, waste another chance to build around a real franchise talent. And this time, they won't be able to say they didn't see it coming. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did Musgrave make the right move going public? Should Stefanski be held accountable for Shedeur's delayed development? And where do the Browns go from here? Hit that like button if you're done watching elite talent get benched for preseason tape, and subscribe so you don't miss a second of what's shaping up to be one of the Browns' most defining off-seasons in years. So now that everything's out in the open, what's the fallout? Let's not sugarcoat it. This isn't a small disagreement inside the Browns facility. This is a full-on philosophical divide that's been simmering for months, and now, thanks to Bobby Musgrave's calmly explosive press conference, it's public. And the target? It's not just how the Browns manage quarterbacks, it's who is managing them. The bigger issue isn't that Shedeur Sanders was benched early in the season. That happens. The issue is that there was no real football reason to justify keeping him buried. Musgrave didn't just hint at that, he laid it out. The narrative that Shedeur wasn't ready? That he wasn't showing enough? That was all built on incomplete data, preseason assumptions, and frankly, fear. Not game performance. Not actual regression. Just fear of letting a rookie go through the normal learning curve. And that fear came from the top. Musgrave didn't say Stefanski's name. He didn't have to. The silence said it all. The selective praise for Tommy Ree, the actual architect of the game plans that finally put Shedeur in a position to succeed, was loud. The refusal to mention the man who decides who plays and who doesn't? Louder. That wasn't passive aggression. That was a deliberate rejection of leadership. And it leaves Kevin Stefanski in a very uncomfortable place. Because now the entire league knows what went down. So do the fans. So does ownership. The head coach kept his most promising rookie quarterback on the sidelines for most of the year, and now, after just a few games of real playing time, that same quarterback is already showing flashes of being a franchise-caliber player. So the question is no longer, was Shedeur ready? It's, why did you keep him from playing? And there is no clean answer to that. It wasn't about development. If it was, Musgrave would have credited the staff as a whole. He would have said, "We took our time with Shedeur and now he's ready." But that's not what he said. He said Shedeur developed because of his own determination and grit. He said Shedeur got better in spite of the lack of support, in spite of the benching, in spite of the organizational neglect. The subtext is this: Shedeur didn't get developed. He developed himself. That's a damning thing to say about an NFL team. These organizations spend millions, on player development. They build entire systems around their quarterbacks. And here in Cleveland, a rookie QB had to rely on a few sympathetic coaches, his own work ethic, and hope that the team's stubborn hierarchy would eventually crack open enough to give him a shot. And now that he's finally gotten it, there's no going back. The world has seen what Shedeur can do. He's accurate, mobile, calm under pressure. He's delivering on third downs, making smart reads, keeping plays alive with his legs, and throwing darts in tight windows. That's not a fluke. That's not a lucky stretch. That's real development, the kind that only comes when you're thrown into the fire. So here we are. The quarterback coach just pulled the fire alarm. And the head coach is standing in the middle of it all, trying to act like the smoke is manageable. But it's not. Not anymore. Because this press conference didn't just expose a coaching rift, it exposed a pattern. The Browns have a history of quarterback mismanagement, and this fits that story perfectly. Instead of nurturing talent, they overthink it. They second-guess it. They suffocate it with depth charts, cautious decisions, and preseason tunnel vision. Shedeur should have been part of the plan months ago. Instead, he was treated like a long-term project. Not because of his performance, but because of someone's idea of what ready looks like. And now Musgrave is saying clearly and publicly that the organization got it wrong. That the plan failed the player. So where does this leave Stefanski? He's now facing scrutiny not just for game results, but for player development, for judgment, for the ability, or lack thereof, to recognize and support young talent before it's too late. Musgrave's words didn't just defend a player, they questioned the culture, the leadership, the process. And whether Stefanski survives this or not, the message is out. Something is broken. And it has been for a while. But here's where it gets worse. The very fact that Musgrave had to say this at all means that internal concerns weren't being heard behind closed doors. Because you don't go public like this unless you've already tried going through the proper channels. You don't walk out and drop a carefully worded critique in front of a dozen microphones unless you know nothing's going to change unless the public gets involved. This was the only way to force a conversation. And now that conversation can't be avoided. Ownership has to ask, why did the most promising quarterback on the roster spend most of the season being ignored? And more importantly, who else is being? Because when one coach is praising the offensive coordinator and the quarterback for figuring things out on their own, and completely leaving the head coach out of that story, it means you have a system that isn't functioning the way it should. It means key people are no longer aligned. And when that happens, it's not long before things fall apart. The sad part? This whole mess didn't have to happen. If the Browns had trusted what they had, if they'd allowed Shedeur the space to make mistakes and grow, they might have discovered this version of him months ago. They might have been able to build around him sooner. They might have had a shot at a smoother transition. Instead, they created friction. They slowed him down. They boxed him into a corner, and now they're acting surprised that he clawed his way out of it and looks like the best option on the field. Musgrave didn't call it a betrayal. But he didn't have to. His message was simple. You didn't believe in him until it was convenient. And now you don't get to pretend like this was the plan all along. The Browns owe Shedeur more than a few starts. They owe him a clear path forward. And they owe him a structure that doesn't punish potential just because it's not polished yet. If they can't provide that, then they don't deserve a quarterback like him. The Browns have been here before. New quarterback. New hope. New opportunity to get it right. And over again they find new ways to let it slip. But this time feels different, not because the story's new but because someone inside the building finally said it out loud. That's why Bobby Musgrave's press conference hit so hard. It wasn't just about defending a player. It was about drawing a line between the people in the organization who are truly investing in the future, and those who are protecting themselves. Musgrave didn't rage or ramble. He didn't give some overly emotional speech. He spoke with the calm, composed tone of someone who has nothing left to lose and everything left to say. And what he said was unmistakable. Shedeur Sanders was failed by this organization. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because the people making the big decisions didn't see what was right in front of them. And the scary part? They still might not. Let's go back to the very beginning. Shedeur Sanders walks into the building, A talented, athletic, smart quarterback with undeniable upside. He's raw, sure. But that's what rookies are supposed to be. That's what development is for. But instead of investing in his learning curve, the Browns shoved him down to fourth string. That's not a development track. That's a depth chart burial. And what was the reason? According to the media narrative, which, let's be honest, was shaped heavily by the coaching staff, he had bad habits. Pocket drifting. Slow reads. Mechanical issues. The kind of stuff that literally every rookie quarterback deals with. But instead of addressing it with reps and in-game coaching, they used it as a reason to shelf him. That's what Bobby Musgrave couldn't sit on anymore. Because while the head coach was focused on preserving a certain structure, a certain pecking order, Musgrave was actually in the quarterback room watching Shedeur improve, day by day, rep by rep. And the minute Shedeur started seeing the field, that progress became obvious. The game slowed down. The throws tightened up. The confidence showed. And now? Now the narrative looks ridiculous. All the talk about not ready and raw completely collapsed the second Shedeur was actually allowed to play. He didn't fall apart. He didn't panic. He didn't look lost. He looked like a quarterback with poise, vision, and grit. So now the Browns have a different problem. They're not just answering questions about who starts next week. They're answering questions about who's running this team and whether they actually know what they're doing. Because if Musgrave's assessment is true, and there's no reason to doubt it, then Shedeur was held back not because of performance, but because of decisions made from the top down based on preseason impressions. And that's inexcusable. You cannot run a professional football team with a development model that punishes rookies for not being perfect in August. Kevin Stefanski's silence in all this is louder than anything Musgrave said. The head coach has not come out to challenge the critique. He hasn't supported it either. He's just there. Quiet. Passive. Meanwhile, Musgrave is publicly praising Tommy Ree for tailoring the offense to help Shedeur thrive. And praising Shedeur himself for powering through a season's worth of organizational neglect. But Stefanski's name? Not a single mention. And in the NFL, that's not a slight. That's a signal. It tells you that the people actually doing the work don't believe the head coach has contributed to this player's growth. It tells you that there's a major disconnect between the guys installing the offense and the one deciding who gets to play in it. That type of disconnect is how you lose locker rooms. Players see this. They see Shedeur grinding every day, making plays when he finally gets a shot, and they also see how long it took for him to get even a sliver of opportunity. They know it wasn't about readiness, it was about stubbornness. And now that it's public, the locker room will remember who had Shedeur's back and who didn't. That matters. A lot. Because now, every developmental player on the Browns roster is asking the same question. If it happened to Shedeur, could it happen to me? And when you lose that trust from within, it's hard to rebuild it. Let's talk about the crux of the matters in the offseason quote one more time. Because that wasn't Bobby Musgrave saying, "We'll reflect later." That was him drawing a line. He's ready for a real conversation. About the culture. About who's making quarterback decisions. About whether this team is built to develop talent or bury it. And if the Browns ignore that call, if they spin this into some miscommunication or try to sweep it under the rug, they're going to be right back here again. Because it's not just Shedeur they're mismanaging. It's a pattern. They've mishandled quarterbacks for years. They've been burned by conservative decision-making, bad timing, poor evaluations. And now they're staring down the exact same situation. But this time, it's happening while the quarterback is proving them wrong on the field in real time. 1. There's no more hiding behind potential. No more stashing talent and hoping it goes away. Shedeur is here now. He's playing. He's producing. And the fact that it took this long is going to haunt this staff unless they address it directly. Because if they don't, if this tension between the coaching staff festers, it won't just be Shedeur looking for a new opportunity. It'll be players and coaches alike wondering if Cleveland is ever going to figure it out. Let's be honest, this isn't a team without talent. This is a team without alignment. You've got a head coach operating one way, an offensive coordinator operating another, and a quarterback's coach who just lit a fire under both of them in front of national media. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens when communication breaks down, when priorities aren't shared, when players are caught in the crossfire. And now, the damage is done. No matter what happens next, Musgrave's words are on record. Shedeur's tape is out there. The questions are mounting. And if the Browns want to avoid this spiraling even further, they need to act fast. Not with PR. Not with more depth chart juggling. But with actual change. Reevaluate who's making decisions. Rebuild trust between the staff. And most importantly, start supporting the players who earn it. Because if Shedeur Sanders is the future of this team, the Browns better start acting like it. Let's not pretend this isn't a turning point. Because everything that's happened, from Shedeur Sanders being buried on the depth chart, to Bobby Musgrave breaking the silence in that now infamous press conference, has led to one unavoidable conclusion: the Browns are at a crossroads. This is no longer about one player. It's about how this franchise handles its future. And if Shedeur is that future, and all signs say he can be, they're dangerously close to screwing it up before it's even begun. The pressure is on Kevin Stefanski now more than ever. He can't shrug this one off. Not when the receipts are this loud, and not when the evidence is playing out on the field. Every snap Shedeur takes, every sharp throw, every game-managing drive, it's a reminder of how much time was wasted. Of how much earlier this growth could have happened if the coaching staff had been willing to let go of their pride and admit they misjudged him. But the silence from Stefanski says everything. No acknowledgement. No accountability. And if you think players aren't noticing, think again. Because if Bobby Musgrave had the guts to go public, you can bet he's not the only one thinking it. He's just the first to say it out loud. And now ownership is watching. The media is circling. And the fans? They're tired. Tired of the same cycle. Tired of the "he's not ready" excuses. Tired of watching young, exciting players rot on the sideline while the team talks about patience instead of progress. This is no longer about how Shedeur started the season. It's about how the organization finishes it. Because the talent is there. The potential is there. What's been missing is the belief. And that doesn't fall on the player. That falls on the leadership. And when leadership refuses to lead, someone else eventually steps up. This time it was Bobby Musgrave. And now that the curtain's been pulled back, the Browns have two options: own the mistakes and course correct, or double down and risk losing more than just a season. Because this isn't just about a quarterback controversy, it's about a franchise deciding what kind of team it wants to be. Drop your thoughts below. Was Musgrave right to air it out? Has Shedeur earned the keys to the franchise? And what happens to Stefanski after all this? Smash that like button if you're over this team holding itself back, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this drama, and we'll keep breaking it down, because in Cleveland the offseason might end up being more explosive than the games.